What if you can make a big leap in your street photography skills in just 1 week? Whether you're struggling with finding compelling compositions or capturing authentic moments, this video will give you 5 powerful things to focus on to transform your shots fast. These aren't just generic tips, they're practical tested methods that will change the way you see and shoot the streets. Stick around because by the end of this week, your photos will be grabbing attention like never before. So let's get right into it. The first and maybe most important step in improving your street photography is to work on pre-visualization. So what do I mean by that? Most people think that great street photography is about being in the right place at the right time, but the best street photographers don't just react to moments, they anticipate them. To get started, spend the beginning of the first day of your week without even lifting your camera. Instead, just observe. Find a location, whether it's in a bustling square or a quiet alley, and just watch how the scene evolves. How do people move? How does the light shift? Pay attention to the rhythm of the street and then start to anticipate when and where something interesting might happen. For example, let's say you're going to go photograph a parade to practice your street photography. You can pre-visualize a shot of a performer mid-dance or a float passing by with colourful decorations. Imagine the moment just as someone makes the right expression or gesture that you're going to capture. Then when you're ready to shoot, you'll have already seen the photo in your mind. Another way you can pre-visualize a shot is thinking in advance of a moment that you could potentially capture. For example, the other day I was walking down the street and I heard a piano from a laundrette. I looked through the window and sure enough there was a guy in there playing the piano. I must have walked past that laundrette hundreds of times and never even knew there was a piano in there, which I thought could then actually make for a really interesting juxtaposition. Before going inside, I had an idea in my head of what I wanted to capture. I'd pre-visualized the shot. Imagine how much stronger your photos could be if you weren't just reacting to the world around you, but instead you were actively shaping the moment before it even happens. Now that we've explored anticipating the scene, what happens when you physically and emotionally step into it? It's easy to stay in the comfort zone, maybe shooting from a distance and relying on long lenses to bring the action to you, which is what I used to do quite a lot of when I first started street photography. But in my opinion, the most compelling street photography is often the most intimate. Robert Capa once said the famous and often overused quote, but I'm going to use it again here anyway: if your pictures aren't good enough, you're not close enough. And this rings especially true in street photography, though you've definitely got to take this with a pinch of salt. You absolutely don't have to always get physically closer to make better street photographs. You can get closer by paying attention to your emotions, yours and those of others on the street too. As you progress through the week, try and commit to getting a bit closer, both physically and emotionally. You could try and choose a wider single focal length and stick to it for the entire week. This sort of limitation will force you to move your feet rather than zooming in to get closer to the action. When you're close enough, you'll not only start to capture more detail, but you'll also create a sense of immersion for the viewer, making them feel more like they're part of the scene. As I touched on earlier, physical proximity is only part of the equation. Emotional closeness also really matters. Instead of just snapping shots of strangers, look for moments where you can capture real emotion. Whether it's an exasperated child sick of visiting all the tourist sites while on holiday, the quiet contemplation of someone lost in thought, or lovers embracing. By the end of the week, you'll notice that getting close changes the dynamic of your photos, giving them more energy, intimacy, and connection. Have you ever felt the energy of a scene by being right in the middle of it? Now imagine translating that feeling into your photos. So now that we've explored stepping into the scene emotionally, what happens when you take a step back and start layering those emotions with complex visual elements? In my opinion, street photography is at its best when it's more than just the flat two-dimensional representation of a scene, which is where strong compositional technique comes in. When you include multiple planes in a photo, foreground, midground, and background, you not only give the image depth, but also invite the viewer to explore different elements within the frame. As the week goes on, try to find a location that offers natural opportunities for layering. A bustling city street, for instance, might have people walking in the foreground, then have cars or cyclists moving in the middle ground, and then towering buildings or signage in the background. Consider how you can arrange all those elements to guide the viewer's eye through the image, but be careful not to overlap the elements in the frame too much. It's also good to think about how you can use a deep depth of field to allow you to keep all the elements in the scene in focus. This creates a more intricate story. You may need to raise the ISO depending on the light to do this, and that's absolutely no problem. I often see photographers who are obsessed with keeping the ISO as low as possible, but that doesn't matter at all in street photography. If you're finding it hard to get close to people to use them as your layers, you can instead use objects like fences or poles or windows to frame your subject within the image, adding extra layers of interest in a more abstract way. Two photographers that are known for their complex layered scenes are Alex Webb and Pinkersov. Every time I look through their work, I notice something different that I missed before, and that's extremely exciting. Very often, street photographers can miss how important composition is in creating powerful images. So check out the link in the description to find out more about how you can overcome this fast. Lighting is perhaps the single most transformative element in photography. In street photography, where you can't control the environment, learning to harness natural light is crucial. Different types of light can drastically change the mood of a photo, from the soft glow of the morning sun to the harsh, contrast-heavy light at noon. Through the week, make it your mission to shoot in different lighting conditions. Though if you're from the UK, it might be more like 10 weeks before you can even get a day with half decent light. But if you can, start early in the morning when the streets are still quiet and the light is often soft and diffused. This time of day is perfect for capturing peaceful contemplative moments. Then as the day progresses, head out again around noon maybe, when the light is more harsh and the shadows are sharp. While this kind of light can be difficult to work with, it can also create dramatic, high contrast images that emphasize texture and form. If the weather allows, end the day by shooting during the golden hour when the sun is low and the light is warm and golden. This is the time of day when everything looks magical, whether it's a person walking down the street or even just the way light catches the edges of a building. Finally, why not stay out late at night and experiment with how you can use artificial light sources to illuminate your subjects in interesting ways. By experimenting with different lighting throughout the week, you'll develop a better understanding of how light impacts your photos and how to use it to your advantage. Once you've explored getting better with capturing different kinds of light, what if your next step was to move beyond a single frame and start thinking about the stories you can tell with your images? Street photography isn't just about capturing aesthetically pleasing images, it's about telling stories, and the best stories are often found in the most ordinary moments. The way two people interact, the way a space transforms over time, or the juxtaposition of old and new are great ways to show a story in your photography. Try to shift your focus from individual standalone frames or singular elements to building a narrative. Start by spending more time in a location with potential. Instead of snapping off 1 or 2 quick photos and moving on, linger for a while and work the scene to give you a better chance of capturing a story. You can also think about how 2 or more elements work together to tell a story. For example, in this image, the person walking through the frame is carrying bicycle wheels, which next to the sign creates a narrative. It doesn't have to be true, but you can still use elements like this in a frame to convey a story or humour. Similarly, in this photo, the rose and the woman's expression adds to the story. Is she sad? Is she happy? Did she get the rose herself, or did a lover give it to her? This element gives the image a narrative, and without it, it would just be a photo of a person which might not be that interesting. What if every photo you took wasn't just a snapshot, but told a wider story of a place or moment in time? Think about how powerful that can be in your photography. We all want to improve our street photography fast, and you can really learn a lot and progress really far in a week if you put your mind to it. But in reality, it does take a lot of time and dedication and practice to see really big progress in your photography. But to help you do that, check out this video next. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.